California. Senator, thank you for joining us tonight. Do you see this ruling as a step backwards?
Caitlin, thanks for having me on such an important day. Not only does it step backwards, this ruling really does take us back decades. Yet again, another example of an extremist majority on the Supreme Court undoing decades of precedent. And in this case, undoing affirmative action, which, maybe they just don't understand what affirmative action is or what affirmative action isn't. Affirmative action is not quotas. It's simply allowing university systems to consider race among all the other factors and criteria in an admissions process. We've been through it here in California, a measure on the ballot in 1996 that was approved by the voters, forced this upon the University of California system, other state university systems, and they have not fully recovered after nearly 3 decades of trying to make up for that loss of an important tool in increasing diversity on college campuses.
Well, you mentioned what people want, and you mentioned, of course, what your home state of California has done. Looking at the polling on this, there was a recent CBS poll. It says that 70% of Americans agree that colleges should not be allowed to consider race in admissions. 30% say it should be allowed, but that appears to be, quite a gap between where leaders in your party certainly stand compared to the country as a whole. How do you explain that?
Yeah, well, I always got to take polls with a grain of salt because, again, not everybody knows what affirmative action is and what affirmative action isn't. We're not talking about mandatory quotas in this case. It's a matter of just considering race and the experience that comes with that as one of many factors in the decision. Some people might have taken that poll to say this is going to be used to allow people in it and improve diversity on a college campus. In my opinion, that's not just a good thing, it's a great thing. Others may have interpreted that question in the form of excluding people on the campus. So, who knows what drove those numbers, but this is what I can tell you. I referenced that we've had this in place in California for decades. In 1996, 2 years after the infamous Proposition 187, one of the first major anti-immigrant initiatives that this country has seen. Soon after Proposition 209, this anti-affirmative action measure, came anti-labor initiatives, anti-bilingual education initiatives. California's come a long way since then, not just the demographics and the population, but the policy making that has led to California being the fourth largest economy in the world. So I do think opinions have changed as people are enlightened. Most private sector leaders can tell you, most academic leaders can tell you, and certainly our federal government knows that we are better as a country, we're better as a democracy, we're better as an economy when we are more inclusive, not less. But those leaders of the future in the public sector and the private sector and in academia are educated on college campuses. And when we undo diversity, we really sort of undermine the quality of education, the educational experience we're providing.
Well, your home state is such an interesting kind of experiment for this because you did reference the actions they took in 1996. But when Democrats in the state, when Democratic leaders tried to reinstate it in 2020, Prop 16, which is what the measure was known as, it failed, and it failed badly. So it's not just the poll numbers; it's also how people are voting on this.
Right. And again, I think it speaks to the difficulty in communicating what's at stake here, what affirmative action is, what affirmative action isn't. But I will tell you this, Caitlin, go back to those 1994, 1996 measures. That's what inspired me to leave a mechanical engineering career behind. I am a product of affirmative action. Would I have gotten into the Massachusetts Institute of Technology with or without those considerations? I don't know. I won't reveal my SAT scores here on this show today, but I do know that with a promising engineering career in front of me, looking at the risk, the danger, the cruelty of a lot of policies that were popular at the time. Doesn't mean they were good policies or the right policies, but they were popular at the time is what motivated me to get involved in government and politics and help steer California into a better, more responsible, more inclusive direction, and have our work cut out to do that for the rest of the nation.
You don't reveal your SAT scores. I won't reveal my ACT scores. I think we have a deal there. But as the way that the White House is responding to this, President Biden was asked today by my colleague Arlette Saenz if he sees this as a rogue court. He said he doesn't see it as a normal court. But when he was asked about expanding the court, something that your party has certainly suggested, members of your party, I should say, have suggested, he said that would be a mistake. What do you say?
Yeah. Look, I don't disagree that there is an absolute crisis of confidence when it comes to this Supreme Court. If you take decisions over the last decade from a democracy standpoint, right? This is the former Secretary of State of California talking. Now, this Supreme Court has made it easier for wealthy people to influence elections and harder for people to exercise their right to vote. And surprise, surprise, it tends to be, historically disenfranchised communities. And here we are now talking about higher education. With today's ruling, the Supreme Court has made it harder for young students of color, young diverse students, and from a life experience standpoint, to envision, let alone access higher education. And, I don't want to assume what's going to happen tomorrow with the student debt case before them, the student loan case before them, but we could be very well on the verge of, for those who are able to get into colleges and universities, for it to be much less affordable for them to obtain their four-year degree. So there is a crisis of confidence, lack of public confidence of the Supreme Court right now, absolutely.
Yeah, one major ruling after the next. We'll see what they do decide on the president's student loan plan. Senator Alex Padilla, thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Caitlin.